Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Last Grand Duchess by Bryn Turnbull. The Last Grand Duchess by Bryn Turnbull follows Grand Duchess Olga Romanov, firstborn daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. Olga is born into a world of opulence and excess, but the arrival of war with Germany changes everything. Olga lives in a world of rumor and controversy. Her parents rely on the aid of a disreputable priest named Rasputin to heal her ailing brother. The people of Russia are losing trust and faith in their leader as food becomes scarce and casualties in the war rise. Olga's only escape is during parties with her aunt, where she feels free to be herself and be a young woman. But as revolution intensifies, Olga knows she is duty-bound to Russia and her family, even if that means sacrificing her own chance at happiness. I am an absolute sucker for all things when it comes to the last days of the Romanovs, the end of Imperial Russia and whatnot. I just love reading that time period. With the death of Tsar Nicholas II and his family, it's pretty much the end of this bygone era, especially when it comes to Russia. It's just such a tragedy, their story, the story of the last of the Romanovs, it's just such an incredible, heartbreaking tragedy, especially because I think what a lot of people tend to gravitate towards and connect to is the death of the Grand Duchesses in particular, because those girls, because there were 4 of them, those girls were just so young and innocent, and to just be so brutally murdered in the fashion that they were, it's just so practically unheard of, and that something like that happened to those beautiful girls and whatnot who had lives and futures ahead of them that were just extinguished, so very quickly, and it's so horribly tragic and upsetting and sad. At the core of this novel is really a story about a family. The Romanovs were very complex. They were definitely not perfect, especially Tsar Nicholas II and his wife, Alexandra. This is a novel about this family who stuck together through thick and thin, stuck together through the Tsarevich Alexei's hemophilia, stuck together through all the stuff with Rasputin, stuck together through World War I, and stuck together through exile, and yeah, they all died together. The novel is, at its heart and core, it is a story about this family, and kind of their narrating this whole thing. It's being narrated through Olga Romanov, who was the eldest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. And I really liked that perspective and point of view, just picking her, sticking with her, and what she's thinking and what she's feeling, seeing what she's witnessing with war around her and revolution, and seeing her through exile, and seeing her have romance, and which is kind of sad too, because that romance is not going to go anywhere. Yes, seeing her relationship with her very complicated parents, or her relationship with her siblings. And what I like too about this book, and what you have to keep in mind, because of the Tsarevich Alexei's his hemophilia, Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, they were just so paranoid about his illness coming out that they just tried to keep it hidden rather than kind of being transparent about it, so yeah, that's how Rasputin kind of comes into play, and how he's able to manipulate them and get into this whole thing. And yeah, we know where the whole Rasputin thing goes. That was one big huge mistake right there. So what you kind of have to keep in mind with this novel, because of Tsar Nicholas II and his wife's paranoia and fear about Alexei's hemophilia coming out, in turn, their children all become reclusive, if you think about it that way. Their children are all kind of kept in the dark. They're not really entirely aware of what's truly going on in their country at the time. And so yeah, that once again, that makes Olga this perfect narrator to this story, from start to finish, because at the start of the novel, you see Olga living in this world of such opulence and grandness, and excess. And it's this very fairy tale-like world and environment that she's living in. And when she's out parading amongst the common people, she is kind of looking at the people of her country and whatnot, looking at them, seeing them clapping and waving and cheering for her and her family. And like I said, there is this degree of a fairy tale ness going on, you know. There is this facade that she's not seeing past, you know. She is just seeing kind of this one point of view of these happy, cheering people. And then kind of the same thing once war with Germany hits and she's out parading amongst the people once again. The people here at the start of the war, in World War One, they're all like, yay, war, we're gonna go kill all the Germans, yay. You know, there's that, what would, I guess, the patriotism of the time, you know. People being really just all gung-ho about the war and excited and everything. And Olga, once again, this whole fairy tale aspect, the people being excited and applauding the Romanovs and whatnot. And I like how you see that naivety, you know, you see that extreme naivety that Olga has at the start of this novel compared to how things start rapidly shifting and changing. Because of course, if you know your history, during World War I with Germany and Russia and whatnot, it was not well. It did not go well. Russia was definitely on the losing side, and they were losing mass casualties during the time. And yeah, that's where you start to get revolution, these flickerings of revolution coming, which was already kind of going on anyway, especially with the 1905 revolution that was kind of lingering there, you know. So yeah, Olga as a character, she starts off as very young and innocent and naive, thinking everything is like a fairy tale and so perfect, and she thinks her country is perfect, she thinks her family is perfect, that they're doing the right thing, that they're ordained by God to do what they're doing, you know. So yeah, as you're shifting and revolution is happening and the war is happening and people are starting to not side with their leaders and whatnot, yeah, Olga starts turning to a much more serious, mature character as she's coming to that realization her country's not perfect, and more than anything, her parents are not perfect. And that's where I really fell in love with this novel in particular, because a lot of times with Romanov historical fiction, I think a lot of times authors really like to, what's the word, romanticize, I think is the right word I'm looking for. A lot of times authors really like to romanticize the tragedy of the death of the Romanovs and whatnot. And they kind of fail to neglect the realism of the time period, if that makes sense. And this book, what Bryn Turnbull does so wonderfully, she doesn't shy away from the complexities of what was going on in Russia during this time period, nor does she shy away from the complexities of Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra's, their complexities and issues and dramas and whatnot, you know. This book is not seeking to romanticize this family, nor is it seeking to romanticize their demise and their execution, you know. This book is seeking to show the imperfection of this time period and what led to their execution and whatnot. And there's such an incredibly poignant, moving scene kind of near the end of this novel where Olga, her and her family, they're now in exile at this point in the novel. Olga just completely breaks down and starts yelling and arguing with Tsar Nicholas II, who was her father, and she starts calling him a coward and what a terrible leader he is and this and that, and why didn't he have the courage to do this, why didn't he have the courage to do that, you know. It's such an incredibly moving scene, because once again, Bryn Turnbull is not here to romanticize the relationship between this family, because they were anything but perfect. Yes, they were a very tight, loving family, but there were moments like that when she's arguing with her parents where Olga feels like a real genuine young woman, you know, who's having grown-up conversations with her parents and whatnot. And those were the types of scenes that I really liked, where it got deep into those complexities, where Olga was finally seeing the imperfections in her mother and father and the mistakes that they made that's leading them to where they're currently at. So I definitely would recommend this book if you love all things Romanoff historical fiction, obviously. There's just something about this book that I found really unique and different. Like I said, a lot of Romanoff historical fiction, there's something that often feels very highly romanticized. Especially just with the whole tragedy. And then, yeah, a lot of books like to play with the whole thing of, ooh, what if there was a survivor? You know, which of course we know through scientific DNA analysis and whatnot, no one survived, you know. It kind of kills me that there are books still be written, that there are books that are still be written about a possible survivor, you know. And it's like, why are there books like that still being written when we have scientific evidence no one survived, you know? So yeah, this book, just to kind of give you a heads up, in case this might bother you or not bother you, the execution is not gone into any sort of detail in this book. The narrative stops literally the night that they wake up, and Olga kind of has this feeling, you know, the doom and gloom that's coming, and she's kind of accepting the moment with a certain amount of grace and whatnot. So that's where the novel ends. You don't get to the execution at all. The novel's not here to spend time on that execution. You know, everybody is very well familiar with the execution and what happens and the falling out and whatnot. Because yeah, once again, Bryn Turnbull, she's seeking to tell a narrative about Olga Romanoff and her experiences and the romances that she may have had, her relationship with her parents and her siblings, and how she is viewing the world, you know, and how the world is affecting her and her dreams and desires, you know, which are tragically cut short, obviously. What I also liked about this novel was the narrative structure. I need to mention that really quickly. The novel goes back and forth throughout the entire book. There's the events that are during the war, and you see Olga at a certain age there during the war and how she helps out with the war effort, and she and her sisters become nurses, and that's where all the kind of the romance subplots are with her. And then there is the other narrative going on in this book, which is during the exile of the family, which is, you know, creeping up towards their execution and whatnot. So yeah, the book is constantly going back and forth between the war and the execution, and I really liked that format. Instead of the book being totally linear, if you will, I liked kind of the back and forth, and seeing, because I think it kind of helped the reader really zone in on the amount of character development that Olga was having over the course of the novel, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, the scenes during the war, you were able to see her naivety and her innocence, and just how carefree she was, and kind of how ignorant she was to what was really kind of going on in the country, you know. Whereas then, with the scenes set during their exile, yeah, you do see Olga as much more mature and serious and really coming to terms with the imperfections of her country and her family and whatnot. So I liked the narrative structure with that back and forth, because it does, like I said, it really allows you to kind of see her character development, like how does she get from this to this, you know? So yeah, once again, pick this book up if you like all things Romanoff historical fiction. I think this would definitely be a good book if you've never read Romanoff historical fiction before. This is probably a good book for you to pick up, because it's not overly complex, you know. A lot of the history and backstory is really well explained, that you're not going to be like overly confused or overwhelmed or anything. So I think this is definitely a good starting point if you have ever had any interest in reading about the Romanoffs. And yeah, especially since it's told through the point of view of Olga, you know, you're just kind of getting that one solitary point of view, and it's really focused, you know, very, very strongly focused. And I mean, yeah, if you just like narratives focusing on women in general, you'll probably really like this as well. So you guys, that is it for my review of The Last Grand Duchess. I really enjoyed it. Definitely one of the better books that I've read this year so far. So I'm definitely curious if you guys have read The Last Grand Duchess. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you plan on reading it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.